Welcome to this week's episode of Dowser Wisdom, the art and science of dowsing. I'm so excited to bring this week's guest to you, Marty Lucas. Marty Lucas is an internationally known radionics consultant, instructor, and also a researcher. He also specializes in using radionics therapeutically for a large variety of issues, including agriculture with land and animals. Additionally, Marty shares his unique approach to radionics to students around the world through his classes and conference calls. He's known for his innovative research and his ability to convey complex ideas in ways that are easy to grasp. Thank you. And as a teacher, he is also generous with his knowledge and wisdom, which is why he's here. Marty is also a past president of the American Society of Dowsers, a regular guest instructor at the annual Great Radionic Expo, the United States Psychotronic Association, as well as the ASD conference. Oh my goodness, I have like so many questions just from your bio. But let's go ahead and dive in. First, I got to ask, what does your mug say?
It says a large
You-
group of people is called a no thanks.
That's fantastic.
Uh,
So, yeah, like to kick us off, Marty, how do you explain radionics?
well, for the dowsing crew and the people that already do a lot of energy work, think of the work that you're already doing with dowsing or your other energy modalities. And radionics is really the left brain approach to do right brain work. So the work that you're doing with your dowsing or your hands-on healing or whatever, I use instrumentation to assist me to do that rather than using my own personal energy. And in a nutshell, what that allows me to do is one, it allows me to get very, very specific into the work that I'm doing, but it also gives me the opportunity to work on multiple projects at once. So currently in my laboratory right now, I've got maybe 20 or 25 different projects that are working even while I'm here on the phone. So yeah,
Wow, that's
it's
amazing.
a nice modality for me to be able to work, and it's all remote, which I really like.
That's right, hence the mug. But
Hence
I
the
I love yeah, I love that you can leverage it's so brilliant actually to be able to like leverage what we do and have it's almost like having mechanical assistance with you doing this energy work. Is that one way to
that's a
think of it?
perfect way to put it. And one of the reasons that I really enjoy going to some of the different conventions, including the Dowsers convention and these others, is that because you come to the same type of work that I'm doing from a different perspective, you bring different skills, different questions, and different approaches that then I can go ahead and take back to the lab and then adapt for the instrumentation. And so it allows me to do my work much easier by copying the work of others.
That's fantastic. Well, and to your point, it's this is why we attend the conferences, right? It's like this is what's
Absolutely.
fascinated me is everyone is using these tools in such different ways. Like we all have our different interests. So it's like that diversity that's really fascinating. Now you've called radionics like Dowsing's cousin. Can you break that down a little bit more?
Well, absolutely. Let's say that we have a question that we are dowsing, and we're trying to find out a percentage of something. And so we have our dowsing chart and we have our dowsing tools, and we're dowsing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20%. With the instrumentation, instead of using a dowsing tool like a L rod or a bobber or a pendulum, we have a stick plate,
Mm.
and that gives us basically the same results that you would get with a pendulum. And so instead of me using a chart, I've got a knob that I twist, and then when I hit that percentage, that's where the resonance point is in the instrument and my intent. And so instead of me going 1, 2, 3, 4, I just twist the knob until it hits 4, boom, and there you go. Um,
And
And
then how do you know when it matches?
Um,
Do you know what I
well,
mean? Like, you know how
instead of
you
having the pendulum where we get a yes, with the
right.
instrumentation, we have what we call a reaction plate, and so we get a stick. And so many beginning radionics people will actually use pendulums until they get used to the idea of the stick. The stick plate that we use is really just another dowsing tool. And
Hmm. Hmm.
with the instrumentation, it allows us to amplify the response, so that for people that are not practiced or not doing a lot of energy work, the reaction plate allows them to get a yes, no, or a percentage or any other number much easier than they would say from a pendulum. But having said all that, there is nothing that I can do on my instrumentation that you cannot do with your own intent and with the with the healing modalities and the dowsing. It's the advantage that I've got with the instrument is I'm using the energy of the resonance of the instrument instead of my own energy, and
Yeah.
even if my mind wanders off, the instrument continues to work. And as you know, when you're doing healing work or you're doing dowsing, if you're distracted, then your results become really weird. And so,
Yeah.
if you got that banana split sitting in front of you, and you're trying to do some dowsing, serious dowsing, well, that banana split is melting, and pretty soon your numbers are all over the place. The instrumentation gives me
Excellent
some
example.
real advantages that way. But and again, if you've got that left brain approach and you like the dials and you like the numbers and you like the specificity, it's wonderful. A disadvantage of radionics is because it is so focused. When I am working with the instrument, I don't have the complexity of the thought form that we would have, say, with a typical dowsing situation. So, whereas I
Right.
can find out uh, you know, the intensity of a particular mineral in the third molar, it doesn't allow me to get really really complex questions, and so that's again another reason why I use a lot of the dowsing, is so that I can use those complex questions to narrow down on the specificity. And as you know, in dowsing, the answers are easy. It's the questions
Yeah.
that are a challenge. So the radionics allows me to focus in on very, very minute details. Um,
Yeah.
and the human mind typically works at a much more complex level. And so the advantage of the dowsing and some of the other healing modalities is the complexity of the thought forms we're working with. Um, and so I really like using a lot of my dowsing in my work in order to narrow me down and get me pointed in the right direction so that I can ask that very specific question. As you know, the questions
Mm.
are the most important. The answers are a piece of cake. Um, and the better question you ask, the better results you get. And
So it's almost like you can narrow the field with the dowsing so that you can ask that really specific or do that, set that really specific um,
absolutely,
direction with the
absolutely. And
healing
then
stuff.
sometimes as you're doing this work, you find that um, the those common sayings that we just throw around throughout society, and one of the primary healing um, frequencies that I use all the time is love, gratitude, and forgiveness. And
Mm.
that most people in this line of business are familiar with the Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, please forgive me,
Yes.
thank you, I love you. Because that is a thing, it has a frequency. Because it has a frequency, I can capture that frequency with my instrumentation. And if I can capture that frequency, then I can broadcast it. And what I have found is that when I am using that Ho'oponopono frequency, it is a phenomenal healing frequency. It works on so many levels. and I don't use it, as the beginning and the end. But what it does for me is it clears away so much chaff and so much um, Mox Nix stuff that really wouldn't make a lot of difference, so that I can get to the core of the issue so much quicker. And so in most of my work, I start off with the Ho'oponopono, and while those that know me know that I probably am not going to be, found, at regular attendance at the Marion Avenue Baptist Church, but one of the second frequencies that I use almost exclusively on everything is trust in God. So the Ho'oponopono and trust in God are my two go-tos, and they probably do 80% of my work for me. And that
Wow.
includes people, animals, and plants and soils.
Yes. I want to
So
hear more about this because I know that you're based in Iowa on an organic farm.
I
And
am.
you mentioned in your bio that like this is used in agriculture too. And in an earlier interview, Sandy Isgro, who you know, actually mentioned that you had used radionics to basically um, protect a body of water, like a fishery where they had fish growing and like the birds were just coming along and picking up.
Mhm.
Could you share an example like that? Like, I would love to learn about soil because I know that, our soil is so depleted, many years of like different practices. Yeah, like, tell me a story. How does that work? What's an example of something that you've done with that?
Well, the what really opened up this Pandora's box for me was I was working with a very conventional farm in Illinois. He's using the
All right.
genetically modified seed. He's using the chemicals. He's just very, very conventional. And
Yeah.
typically, when you work with the soil, you can balance all the individual minerals, and so you're balancing the energy intensity of, say, the calcium and the magnesium and the sulfur and the whatever. Uh, and what I began broadcasting was just the Ho'oponopono prayer to this man's farm. And what I found was that removes the energy blockages that inhibit the soil life from balancing the soil itself. The biology in the soil is already programmed to balance the soil and to release nutrients for the plants. And the toxins we apply act as blocks for that, as do our thought forms that we put in there. And what
Yes.
I found was very, very interesting is that when I broadcast just the prayer, I found that all of the minerals in that sample began to balance automatically without me interfering with them, with the exception of silica. Silica actually went down, and then over a period of time, it began to come up. And what I know from the science end of that is that silica is one of the base minerals that the biology of the soil uses as a fuel, if you will, to transmute into the other needed minerals. So it was actually using the silica and transmuting the silica into those other needed minerals in the soil. And what I found was that at the end of the year, not only did everything look good on my instrumentation, but the farmer had less weeds, he had less insect issues, and he had about a 10% increase in the overall yield. And the more we study nature, the more we realize that it is not, um, the uh, battle of the fittest. It is not, who
Yes.
is the strongest, who is the meanest. It is actually all about cooperation. And the biology in the soil wants to cooperate to support the biology of whatever plants, and actually wants to, if that's the right phraseology, to feed the animals that are grazing on those plants. So we're going through all this, and it is survival of the fittest, or survival of the most cooperative. And as we step out of the very American way of adversarial polarity and start thinking of everything in terms of a single system that wants to work together, then my job
Mm-hmm.
is not to fix the system. My job is to remove the blockages so the system can fix itself. And that philosophy works whether it is a pig, a people, a plant, or the soil. Um, yeah, and so even as you're looking at your yard in the front of the yard, and you're going, oh my gosh, I've got all these dandelions growing in the front yard. Well, the dandelion is a what we would refer to as a calcium plant. Its job
Mm.
is to bring calcium up from the underneath the soil, the subsoil up. It is also a very strong detoxifier. It's a great liver cleanse. And so if you've got a lot of dandelions growing in your front yard, the first thing I would look at would be what is it that I need? And make the assumption that nature is there trying to help you. Now, if your assumption is wrong, you really haven't lost anything. But if you've got a lot of detoxification plants that are growing in your environment, in your garden, in your front yard, in your fields, start looking and seeing what needs to be detoxified. You know, you know,
Mm-hmm.
if it's, this system is all connected, and that's what quantum science tells us that it is, then we can assume that when things are happening around us, it is not a coincidence, but is actually part of the system. And so, time and time again, if I were to do an analysis on, um, on somebody or something that where there's a lot of dandelions in their environment, I'm going to find that there's toxicity issues and there's issues with the availability of calcium. And
Wow.
it's just boom. And look around at the people. Many of the people that are pouring the poisons on their front yard, have issues with osteoporosis, have issues with acidity in their bodies, have toxic issues, and have all the rest of this. You go, well, maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe there is something
Right.
more to this. Yeah, and I think a lot of that is some of the native traditions that have been passed on to us forever. That as Western Americans, we threw all that stuff away because we couldn't analyze it in a chem lab. Uh, but the
Sure.
deeper you get, and the more you understand modern science, not the Newtonian science that we were taught in high school, but modern science, the more you realize that these ancient traditions not only are they very, very wise, but they're also very true. And
Yes.
in the Dowsers, as you know, well know, how often has somebody accused us of being non-scientific? And I've had that thrown in my face several times. And I say, okay, that's fine, but here's the thing: the Newtonian science that you are relying on, when Newton was doing his work, we were still burning witches. Things have changed a little bit since then. We've learned an awful lot. And that science you learned in high school is a great place to start, but it is not the ending point.
Well, I think it's such a brilliant point that you make, which is, really has when we talk about, oh, well, we couldn't prove it in a lab, but did we have the advanced enough instrumentation to prove it in a lab? You know what I mean? It's kind of like there's an assumption, that's that assumption that was not allowing, them to see the wisdom of these traditions. Is like, it's like trying to look through a microscope that only operates up to a certain power, and then, like, well, I don't see these cells that you're talking about. Like, science has gone through these transformations over and over again. And I loved what you said too, of whether or not you believe it, or you know what I mean, because been asked that too. I'll say, like, oh, something exactly like what you're saying, like, oh, really, you've got a lot of dandelions showing up, have you checked this out? And I love your point that there's no harm and giving it a try. What do you have to lose if you say, huh, maybe this is a message for me? Maybe there is some information here for me. It's like, uh, anyways, I loved that point of there's no harmful effects to, like, following that thread of logic and seeing if it helps. But the benefits, if and when it does work, like completely, are worth it. So,
Yeah, Dr. Ellen Kamai, who goes by the natural nurse, she tells us that every single wives' tale that she has studied turned out to be true. And so, as you start thinking about that, our assumption in our scientific age is that our ancestors were somehow superstitious or maybe just a little bit stupid. But as you start looking back and seeing what these people did, as they, built civilization and as they moved out into, completely untamed areas and raised families and were successful, they did things because it worked. And they passed on those things that worked as wisdom. One of the primary things that I share with most of my students, and every one of us at one time or another has been, led in prayer to say, the blessing for the food. And,
yes.
our in regular society, we think of that blessing as kind of like we dress it up a little better than rub a dub dub, thanks for the grub, but it's mostly just um, the same patter that we say over and over and over again. But here is what I have found in radionics: when somebody asks for the blessing for their food, and they ask for it with real intent, and it can be something just as simple as, you know, please make this food as nutritious for me as possible. When I analyze the food before and after, asking for the blessing over the food changes the food. It
Wow.
makes physical changes in what's going on. So, asking for the blessing is not some superstition that is left over from the Dark Ages. It was done because it worked. And once we understand that, as we look at these traditions that are passed down to us, that there is a scientific reason behind them, and we can follow that scientific reason, and then we can apply it. Once we understand what's going on, then we can take it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And that's really been my quest for the last 20 years. And just how far can I push this? How many of these ancient traditions are based in truth? Can I find that truth? And can I go even further? And it is
Right.
just an amazing journey. And it's brought amazing people into my life. And the other thing that's really cool is those less than amazing people that were in my life have found somewhere else to go. And that works too.
To your point, like people have been dowsing in one form or another, right? Like for as long as there have been people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like this kind of the that sort of ancient wisdom. We can also think of it as native wisdom, indigenous wisdom, or just think of it as like eternal wisdom. I love what you're saying about the food. Like it demonstrates that our intent has an actual tangible effect on the world around us. So, how far have you pushed it, Marty? Like, take us to the edge. So, we talked about blessing your food. Like, what's some of the stuff that you're playing with now? Like, what are you finding in your research and in your adventures?
It is
What are you most excited about right
what has really been interesting is that as you start to break down these internal blockages, it allows you to start asking questions that you would have never thought of before. And one of the most fruitful avenues that I've been working on for the last year or so came as a direct result of some of the work that Gail West brings to the table.
now?
And Gail, who is the author of Money Come Dance with Me, says that there is your heart's desire and there is your soul's desire. Well, your heart's desire is, in my view, why you're on this planet, and your soul's desire is who you are. And when you bring those two together into your heart space, it changes everything. And typically, when we talk to adults about heart and soul's desire, they're thinking in terms of things or people, and they think perhaps it's selfish or even naive. But when you get rid of all the superficiality with it and get down to the basics, it's who you are and why you're here. And when you bring those two together and you start to resonate in that frequency, then all of that, am I smart enough? Am I tall enough? Am I thin enough? Am I young enough? Am I enough? All of that stuff goes away just completely, because you've got this inner confidence that steps in. And as you are working in that basically your place of power, it's like the entire universe lines up behind you to help make it happen. So those things that you want to do are the things that make you happy, which are the things that you are
Yes.
supposed to do. And because we're all connected, then the universe steps in behind you to make it happen. And all of us at one point or another have lived in brief times when we've lived in the flow. When you bring your heart and souls together, heart and soul's desires together into the heart space, you live in the flow. You live in a
Mm,
state of constant miracle, constant synchronicities, constant coincidences, and it's just expected. And
yes.
that change is so profound, not only in my aspect and how I look at things, but in the health and wellness of the people I work with. Because when something happens, it's not happening to them, it's happening through them and for them, and that changes everything. And
Yes. Oh, I love that.
yes, and
Oh,
and there
please
there are
continue.
so
Don't
many
let me
ways to
stop you.
link your heart and soul together. Certainly, I've got my tools that I use, and I offer them. But if you look at many of the traditional ceremonies and much of the work that we are already doing, if you look at it and you begin to understand what the intent was before they added all of the frosting, then you start to see, okay, that's what that is what that does. And when you understand that that's what you're looking for, then it's much easier to get there. And yeah, and that aligning yourself with your true purpose, your highest good, then opens up all the rest of the doors. Then you start asking, all those questions that are either too ridiculous to ask, or you're afraid to ask, or were forbidden to ask, and you start getting answers to those questions, and you start realizing, wait a minute, yeah, there is a way to go here. And so as people come into your life, and there's a wonderful lady out of St. Charles, Louisiana, that has spent her entire life talking to angels. Oh, I've got a
Mm,
dowsing tool. I can ask. Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible for me? Yes. Can I do it? Yes. Are there blockages interfering with me doing it? And if that is yes, how many blockages? How do I go about dissolving those blockages? And then you work through that dowsing tree, if you will, and suddenly you realize that, wait a minute, if you can do it, I can do it. And if it happened once, it's possible. And so you look through all of history and all these other things and going, okay, what is it do I want to do? Because nothing is impossible if I want it enough.
wow.
What a cool time to be
Wow.
alive.
It is such a cool time to be alive. Well, and what you're talking about, the like bringing together in the heart space, like who I am and my like it's like just reiterate it for me because it's so profound. It's like my soul's desire and my heart's desire, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you
And
bring those together in your heart space
into the heart space.
because
And it's who
like
you are and why you're here.
exactly, because like it's no accident who we are. It's completely related to our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes perfect sense to me. It like confirms just some of my own stuff that I've done this with you, and it is a transcendent experience to really, you know,
It absolutely is. But all of that for me, and everybody has
yes.
their own experience with it, but all of that, well, the imposter syndrome stuff just goes away completely. All of that um, uncertainty goes away. The confidence comes in. But then the other thing and I warn everybody about this as well, is that if you are not being true to yourself, it's going to be very, very hard to follow that path. So if you have sold out your higher purpose for money or security, or because of somebody else wants this from you or whatever, that isn't going to work. And it will
Mm,
absolutely cause all sorts of problems until you let it go. But when you do let it go, something as good or better will come in. And when the preacher told me that when I was a kid, and that if you trust in God, and something better will come in. I didn't believe when he told me, because he didn't believe it. He didn't believe it because he had
mm.
never seen it. And if I hadn't seen it, I would have a hard time believing it myself. But now that I see it and live it, it is such a great way to live. Now, does that mean that my life is perfect? No, no. But it means that just like in the Ho'oponopono, I'm taking full responsibility. When something happens, there's a reason for it. It's not happening to me. You know, it's
Right.
happening through me or for me. Okay, let's find out what that reason is. And when I wake up, if my day is not filled with, if I don't see some miracles, if I don't see some coincidences, if I don't see some synchronicities, then I'm trying to find out, okay, what's going on here that's got me out of the flow? Because I want to live in
Right.
that flow. When I pull into the grocery store, I expect there will be the perfect parking space.
Yes.
And I know that sounds kind of mundane and it even sounds kind of selfish, but when you're in the flow, there'll be a parking space there. When you're in the flow, what you need is
Yes.
going to be there. And when you're in the flow, you'll stand in front of the elevator that's going to open next. That's just part of the way life is. And you go, okay, if that's the way life is supposed to be, why would I want to live any other way?
Oh my gosh, Marty. Well, I love that you give that example because I've started doing that for the last, I don't know, several years or what have you. I call it Rockstar Parking, where you just pull up and you're just right in front and you just hop right out. And it's like, it's just exactly where you want to be. And I just expect it now. And so it always shows up. It is profound. And it's like the way that, to your point, the way that the universe will rearrange, like maybe I'll get stuck at a light for 5 minutes so that that person, the person that was there can vacate so that I can come in. Who knows? It doesn't even matter. But the universe kind of, that fabric comes up behind you when you've got that clear intent that is, and and it's not 100% selfish, because it's like, it's not to harm it. There's no harm to anyone else. It's always that kind of highest good. And oh, that's great. I love that. I love that example because it sounds mundane, but it's also a way that people can just, like, for me, what it was like, it helped me to build that trust and faith muscle, right? It's like,
Yes.
until, like, the priest that you were talking about, where he didn't really believe it, right? So for folks where they're like, like, it was so sweet. My I was sharing something that I had learned with my daughter, and she's like, is there any proof of that? And just like what we were talking about, like, can you bring that in the lab and da 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 da? And it's like, well, they don't have that instrumentation yet, and you can just witness it for yourself. So it's something that you can try, and you just try it out. And it's like, you expect it, and it starts to happen, and it happens again and again. And you're like, oh, I'm not just making this up. Like, this is really happening. It's very cool.
And and you're right. For many of us, we don't notice the mundane, and so when the miracles are happening around us, we're wandering around completely oblivious to it. And when and what Dr. Dan Scow used to teach is, see what you look at. And
Mm.
because we're looking at stuff all the time, but we're just simply not seeing it. And when you see what you're looking at and you begin to go, oh, not only is this happening for me all the time, but this is the way it's supposed to be. This is better. I like this. So whatever I am doing, I want to
Right.
keep doing this.
Exactly.
And
Uh,
and it's the as you begin
like if
noticing,
I'm wrong, I don't want to be right.
absolutely. And I tell people that as well. If all that is happening in my life is my perspective and it is just between my ears, well, my perspective is my reality, and that is good enough for me. Okay. Yeah. And what's interesting is that as you step into your power and you are doing what you are meant here to do, the people that need you show up, and the people that are there that do show up are also there to help you. And so you've got this, you know, completely, unsolicited volunteer army to help you make happen whatever is supposed to happen. And occasionally I'll travel around the country and I'll be teaching radionics, and marketing is not my favorite thing to do. So I don't spend a lot of time making sure that I've got the just the right venue and the right number of students and all the. That's just not my thing. I don't really enjoy it. But what happens is that every class has the perfect amount of students every time, and
Mm.
and the students that are supposed to be there are the ones that bring that value to the class. And now, do I have classes where I've got rooms with 500 people in them? No, because that would not be perfect for what I'm doing. And
Mm.
and what I'm doing is finding those people that really resonate with this message and really understand, what we can do, and helping those people to go that next step and the next two steps and the next five steps. Uh, and if I had 500 people like that in the same room, oh my gosh, I probably wouldn't even need to be there. Getting 500 avatars in the same room. Wow, how cool would that be? But again, it is really, in radionics, that's probably one of the biggest breakthroughs that I found. And then, as I'm stepping into this, I've been going, okay, what are some of these blockages that are keeping us from where we want to go? And most of those blockages are between our ears, because we have all these self-limiting beliefs that we've ascribed to. And there's entire modalities in the energy community that deal with those core beliefs. And then there's also some outside, and I just call them programs, that interfere with us as well. Yeah, and so
Mm.
I
Mm.
also work on trying to dissolve those outside programs, and get rid of the inside stuff, get rid of the outside stuff, and then let you do whatever it is that you came here to do. And it's
Yeah.
it's a wonderful way to live, and I really love my work. I love my business. And if frankly, if it had not been for the American Society of Dowsers and many of the people that I associate with in that community, I wouldn't be where I am today. uh, because they bring a different perspective to me than I would have had, coming from the agricultural, coming from the nutritional, coming from that perspective. And it is so fun to associate with energy workers. And as you meet the people at the dowsing conventions, there's a whole bunch of them that don't know what is impossible. And since they don't know it can't be done, they just go ahead and do it.
Yes.
And when you see how, and they're wonderful people, but when you see how ordinary they are, I mean, it's not like they have some kind of special thing that was given to only them and the rest of us can't have. And they will tell you that. They'll tell you that everything that they do can be learned and can be, and you just figure out how to do it. And when you start practicing, you realize, wait a minute, I can be as good a dowser as Leroy Bowl. Yeah, I can learn what I need to learn about the runic labyrinth from Sandy. I can learn
Mm-hmm.
many of the other, healing techniques that the other people bring to the convention. And as you learn from these people, you realize just how powerful you are and just how
Exactly.
powerful you may want to be.
Wow.
What kind of
Well,
miracles do
and
you want in
that's
your life?
right. It's up to you.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, I just
Uh,
want to bask in that for a minute.
yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I've got a
So,
friend of mine that is an extraordinary hands-on healer. Um, I
mm,
mean, his life when he's healing is absolutely miracles. Including you know traumatic injuries, including broken bones and the rest of that. And his approach is not some kind of a guru coming down from on high to bestow whatever. His approach is, okay, yeah, we can do this, and then he does it. And
yeah.
and it's much like when you're watching Michelle Peel when she's working with people. It isn't a matter of magic and mystery and the rest of that. It is just a part of ordinary life for her. And when you watch her work and you're seeing these miracles one after another, and you go, wait a minute, if that's her ordinary life, I want that to be my ordinary life. I want to have those
Isn't that the
miracles.
truth? Hmm.
Amen.
Amen. Right. Well, and I love what you say too, because there is like it's like a humbleness. Not that everyone has egos and stuff like that, but there's a like an ordinariness of that's what it is. It's like this the ordinariness of the extraordinary. That's what blew me away too at the first conference that I attended, because I was hearing people talking about increasing crop yields, changing weather patterns. I mean, and I was like, what? Like humans can do this? Yes. You know, we're a lot we're a lot harder to control when we know how powerful we are.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's but beyond that, like life just gets so fun. Life gets really, really fun the more we connect in with that. So
Uh,
tell me about in our, as we wrap this up, what are you working on right now? Is there a project that what are you most excited about, or that you're either seeing in your work, that you're doing in your work right now?
well, one of the things, most of my practice right now is with people. I still do some agricultural, but it's mostly with people. What I am
Yeah.
finding is that healing is almost always possible, no matter what it is. Whether it is something chronic, whether it is something infectious, wherever, healing is almost always possible if they want to stay. I have also found, and this is again verified by Dowsing, that while aging itself is common and it is nearly universal in our environment, it is not a natural or inevitable program. And I am working to desperately to find out. Well, it's not desperately; it's just a quest. Is so much
Yeah.
fun to find out what are those
Yeah.
blockages and why it is happening. And it's not that I'm looking, or expect to find that fountain of youth, where I can, be 20 again. But as I set really high goals, I accomplish a lot of stuff in the meantime that makes a big difference for a lot of people. And as I'd studied with a little bit of Raymond Grace's work, and he has a friend that is a
Hmm.
breatharian, and it's one of those people that goes throughout life without eating. Now,
Right.
as a dowser and somewhat of a skeptic, well, that's either true or it's not true. Um, if it's not true, then I lose nothing by investigating it, except some time. If it is true, then I have this great opportunity to find out, okay, what all is going on here. And so, as a dowser, and I would encourage everyone to do this, you can dowse right now and find what percentage of your nutrition and energy you are pulling directly from the ether, directly from the environment right now. If the answer
Mm,
you get is anything other than zero, that means that your body is capable of drawing energy and nutrition directly from the environment. And so the difference between most of us and Raymond Grace's friend is that he has gone ahead and perfected that skill. Well, you can imagine
yeah.
how many nutritional issues there are, how many health issues there are, and even how many people that have really compromised digestive systems. If I can understand energetically how I can stimulate the body to pull its necessary energy and nutrition directly from the environment, nutritional issues go away. Compromised
Yes.
digestive system doesn't make any difference anymore. And so if I have someone, a loved one that perhaps, is, in the hospital for some kind of a terrible thing, and they're doing whatever they're doing to him, feeding them hospital food or an IV, uh, maybe I can work energetically so that any of the missing nutrition that he needs, he can pull that directly from the atmosphere. And so he can go ahead and heal. And that's exactly what I see. The way the body is
Yes.
designed is that it always brings in what's most important first.
Hmm.
And so you think about that. And if you're dowsing, if you haven't dowsed it, I encourage you to do that. Most people are already bringing in between 10 and 15% of their nutrition right now. And so if you think about that, if I can raise that percentage, then maybe I don't have to worry as much about the quality of the food that I'm finding. Does it have enough strontium? Does it have enough boron? Does it have enough who knowsium? Who cares? The point is, if I can get my system to take care of that problem for me, and it really, again, it gets back to finding what those blockages are and dissolving those blockages, then those other problems go away. And
Right.
regardless of your religious and spiritual tradition, when you read about the Garden of Eden, there is no discussion of their wonderful weekend barbecues. you know, when you read the story of the ark, and however many times that's been mistranslated, and you have that many animals all together in one place. Again, there was not, the lions didn't have a massacre and suddenly wipe out the rabbits.
Right.
So if you think about that,
Sure.
you go, okay, these stories are either true or false, or partly true or partly false, or whatever, but that allows you to start asking these dowsing questions. And as you ask the questions, you start have the answers, and then you can start going down these rabbit holes and find out, okay, maybe the blockages that are keeping me from absorbing that energy and nutrition directly from the environment, maybe those blockages are more here than here.
Hmm.
And again,
Right.
let's say that I
Well, and
investigate this.
even,
And yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
The worst that can
even just
happen is
putting
I get
in,
a
like
no.
you said before. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and to your point too, it's like what we talked about earlier. We know that our intent with the food, like Dr. Michelle like says this, talks about this a lot, that it's more important the energy with which, like that you're putting that food in your mouth versus what it is, right? So this it all
Mhm.
kind of ties back to that, whether we're pulling it from the environment or we're pulling it from the food, or like you described, when we take that moment to bless, to be in gratitude for that food before bringing it into our body, it qualitatively changes the food so that it is more nutritional. I mean, I think that's like bringing all of these pieces together and knowing that we're all different, right? For some folks, they're going to be like, breatharian, not interested, right? And for other folks, but right, I'm like, I'm enjoying the food just a little too much. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And how can I um, increase its nutrition, increase my body's absorption of that? It's like combining all of these things and using dowsing to say, is it possible? Is this for me? Like that series of questions. you are a well, I mean, you're a master dowser, but you're a master question asker or askerer. Yeah. Because yeah. Because I've seen you in action because that's I think one of my most profound learnings in learning about dowsing is it really is about that question. And often if you're getting kind of a wonky response or what have you, it's like, are you asking the right question? Is there a question you haven't asked that you need to ask before you ask that one?
Yeah. One of the things that was real interesting is that, uh, you know, I turned on the computer the other day and it went on, it did one of those updates, on its own. Does yours do that? Okay. And so all the programs
Yes.
you had open, they're closed and I thought I had that turned off and I said, okay, this is kind of interesting. I wonder, if our DNA is kind of the hardware, uh,
Hmm.
our soul is really the operator. So maybe there's an operating system in there. And so I did a dowsing. And so I said, okay, do humans have an operating system? Well, yeah, they do. Great. When was the last time mind was updated? And I got a number for that. And I went, wow. Okay, now if my operating system is divine, it would be perfect. It would not need to be updated. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. See, and these are the kind of questions that start to take you, down that rabbit hole, and you realize that many of the issues that humanity, you know, suffers from are common throughout, and so we can start asking those questions and digging in and finding out, okay, if this is the answer to that, where do I go from here? If I have this operating system where my soul can interface with the body, if it's not optimal, is the optimal one available? Is it my highest interest to download it? Can I download it? And then how?
Mm.
And if you follow that line, and you're good at dowsing and good at visualization, um, trust me, that is a very profitable line of questioning for anybody that wants to follow it.
Mm. Ah, that's beautiful. Are there I've so enjoyed our conversation today, Marty. We covered so many wonderful topics. Are there any last pearls of wisdom or like what is that one thing that you would love for people to take away um, from our conversation today?
If people really understood how powerful they were, that's probably, and I think that everybody, in this industry says that at one time or another. But the one thing I would take away from this, however you have to get there, find out how you can align your heart and soul's desires into your heart space. If you can figure that puzzle out, and there's people all over that will help you do that. But if you can figure that piece of the puzzle out, so many of your other problems will simply not be problems anymore. Life is
Mm.
so much more fun when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing because you have all the support in the world to make it happen. And so come to the American Society of Dowsers Convention in Marlborough, Mass, and meet the people that are doing this.
I'll just we'll just slip in a shameless plug right there. I love it.
Absolutely
Well, I mean,
shameless
I
plug.
highly recommend it. I've been talking to folks who are, outside the dowsing community and just saying like you got to check this out because I had, 3 years ago I hadn't heard about this organization and so coming in and just seeing the work that people are doing and and to your point like almost not like quietly but it's it doesn't have that boo like that big like oh I am the guru like come to me and learn it's like none of that energy. It's like we're all experimenting, we're all questing and coming together and bring like oh like what'd you learn this year, oh what'd you learn this year and comparing notes. And I think that it's really just a, yeah, it's a great meeting of hearts and minds.
Yeah.
I think
And
especially for
when you
people
come to
who are
convention,
awake and great. Mm,
when you come to convention, find that person that is most unlike you. Find the strangest person you can find there. And by the way, that may be
I
that
will.
may take some doing to find the strangest one, but find the one that is the most unlike you because they have the most to teach you. And trust me, been there, done that. I've got the T-shirt. It is. It will make that entire experience so much more fun because our
Yeah.
natural tendency is to stay with the people that are like us. Well,
Hmm. Hmm.
if you step out of that when you go to this convention, and it will pay absolute dividends, I guarantee.
That, well, that was like a bonus piece of wisdom, because I almost feel like you could take that out into really any experience. Is, like, really looking at people as like, this is, my perspective as well, is like, oh, what do you have to teach me,
Yeah,
especially, I mean, everyone included, but especially those people where I feel like, nope, nothing in common. There's always
always.
something to
So
learn. So
at a conference in Nauvoo, I was invited as a guest to the gathering of the grandmothers, which is a gathering of a bunch of the it's a native gathering, and so I know zippity doo dah about the native ceremonies, whatever, and being your basic Iowa
what an
farm boy,
honor.
I'm wandering around like a tourist and just having a great time. And so there was a young guy there, and he has all the jewelry and he has the eye makeup and the long fingernails and I mean, just dressed to the nines. Not the type of person you
Yes.
would typically find wandering the streets of Sigourney, Iowa. And so I walk up to him and I say, I always make a point trying to meet the guy that's most unlike me. And I'm kind of giving him the look over, like, and I could see that his defenses were starting to go up because he was just expecting all sorts of things. And I said, yeah, and then here you are. You're tall, you're thin, and you got hair. Hi, I'm Marty. And I thought, just that change was just whoa. And we had a phenomenal conversation. And yeah, is he different than me? Absolutely. Yeah. Do we you know, do we even see the world in the same? Are we even living in the same world? That's probably a better question. But again, um, doing that kind of thing where you can meet those people that are so much different is so rewarding. And so
Absolutely.
that's probably the last wisdom that I, I would drop today.
That's it.
That's it.
You
That's it.
draw the line there.
That's all you get for free.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Marty. I really appreciate our conversation. I know I can feel the what is it? The ripple effect, you know, of
Well,
each one of these conversations.
well, thank you for inviting me. It is so much fun to talk about my work, and to share the exciting things that are happening in the energy community. We are able to do things today that were simply impossible 10 years ago because the energy wasn't available. And so all those restrictions that you think are there aren't.
They're falling away. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.